When I was told I was school captain when I was 11 years old, nobody knew that I rushed home to share my good news with my mum, only to find her unconscious on the floor of our lounge room after a day of drinking, or that this was what I returned home to most days. I hid this experience in the same way I hid the bruises that my dad gave me, like it was a shameful secret. When I was about to start year 12, Mum left to go into rehab in a city 700 kilometres away, and I decided not to go with her. At the time, our family was scraping by on the sole parents' pension, so she couldn't afford to support me. This meant that at 16, I completed year 12 without any parents, working part-time, scraping money together to pay bills and buy groceries and get by. Apart from a few close friends, nobody knew this about me. It felt like another thing that I was meant to be ashamed of. Today, I'm an award-winning author and a keynote speaker. My TEDx talk has had over 500,000 views, but I'm also the girl that I used to be, who grew up too fast because there was no other choice, who was teased because I had a drunk mother and a second-hand uniform, and who mopped floors and sold shoes and did whatever else it took to get by. We spend so much of our time comparing what is going on inside of ourselves to the way people's lives look on the outside. But we have no idea what struggles people have faced to get where they are, or what it has cost them to live the life that they're now living. We don't know the burdens people carry, or how they feel about themselves when they're all alone in the darkest hours of the night. One of the reasons that I've made it part of my life's work to continue to share my story is because when I was growing up, I didn't hear stories like mine. I still don't hear people talking about these sort of things very much today. I know talking about these things can be hard, especially if you've grown up in a home where you were told either implicitly or explicitly that what happened in your house was a secret that you're meant to keep. But not hearing these stories when I was younger, not hearing others going through what I went through, made me feel like there was something shameful about what I'd experienced. And for a long time, I thought that meant there was something shameful about me. My mum left school in year 9, my dad left in year 10, my sister only made it into year 11, so I became the first person in my family to make it to university, which was great, and I thought it was going to be this wonderful thing that would make me into a new, better person. But university wasn't the doorway to the better life that I hoped it would be. When I arrived at my course and the other students started asking me what high school I'd been to, it took me a while to realise that they were actually trying to assess my socioeconomic status to see whether or not I was somebody worth talking to. Turns out I wasn't. A state high school didn't get you that kind of credibility. When they told me stories of their families getting together over Christmas, and I'd think of my own family Christmases, which mostly slid by without acknowledgement because Mum was alone drinking in her room. And all of this drinking would be something that it would eventually result in her developing alcoholic dementia at the age of 52. I knew this was something that would make people look down on me, so I pretended to be someone I wasn't. I abandoned my truth to create a more acceptable, middle-class version of myself. I changed the way I spoke. I bought the same cool clothes as the private school kids. And I glossed over or made up stories about my family that wouldn't offend anyone. I kept the ugly truth of my reality a secret because I felt like it didn't have a place in polite society. Not hearing from others who'd been through the same sorts of things I had made me feel like I was an outsider and like I didn't belong. I don't want others to feel that way, so I share my story in the hope that it might help. I think that if we had more honest conversations about the things that have hurt us and the things that have helped us heal, then we as a society would be a whole lot better off. There's no denying that traumatic experiences leave you with scars. But I like to think of these scars as cracks. And as Leonard Cohen said, there's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. I also like to think of my cracks in the same way they do in kintsugi. Kintsugi is a Japanese art form that takes broken plates and glues those plates back together with resin infused with gold. So instead of hiding the cracks, they highlight them and honour them as something worth celebrating. And I personally find it much more helpful to think of myself as a sparkling golden piece of Japanese art than a broken plate. Because there is gold in these cracks. My grief from what my family has been through is what drives me to try and make it better for other people. My pain is at the heart of my compassion. My vulnerability is what gives me true strength. All I lacked growing up is the thing that makes me never-endingly grateful for all of the amazing things I have in my life now. I'm not trying to deny that there are terrible things that happen to people or that there isn't very real injustice in the world. But I think people are more than the worst things that have ever happened to them. And just because you felt powerless in the past doesn't mean that you don't have the power to impact your life in the present. There's a book called Man's Search for Meaning, which is written by a psychiatrist called Viktor E. Frankl, who spent 3 years in death camps during the Holocaust. His perspective was that no matter how horrendously he was treated, that didn't mean that he had to take that treatment on board as a reflection of his own worth. He said, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. To me, I think of this related to the events that happen in our lives and the stories that we tell ourselves about what those events mean. So what do I mean by this? I mean, the event that happened in my life is, say for instance, my dad hitting me or my mum drinking. The events are the things in our lives that we don't have any control over. That's stuff that happens to us. But the stories that we tell ourselves about what those events mean are something we do have the power to change. So the stories that I used to tell myself about Dad hitting me was that meant that I must be unlovable and that I was never going to be good enough no matter how hard I tried. I thought Mum's drinking was a reflection on me and that I wasn't worth loving, so I wasn't worth getting sober for. Your power comes when you realise that you are in control of the stories you are telling about your life. Once you become aware that the events themselves don't inherently come wrapped in meanings and that you're the one who's in control of the stories that you're making up, you begin to see that life isn't as set in stone as you probably once thought, and that if you have the power to make up one story, then you also have the power to make up another. The stories I now tell myself are that I do deserve love, and I always did. It's just that my parents, it wasn't within their capability to give me the kind of love I needed. Stories I tell myself that neither of my parents set out to deliberately hurt me. They were both just a bit broken in their own ways, and hurt people hurt people. Coming to understand this has happened over many years. It's involved a lot of therapy, a lot of reading of books, and it really took a willingness to take responsibility for the part I was playing in the places I was stuck in my life, and to take new actions and try different things until something was able to shift. It involved breaking down my defenses and feeling the hurt that was behind this enormous wall of anger that I used as a shield to stop me from feeling vulnerable. If you're in a bad place right now, please know it's not permanent. The one thing that is guaranteed in life that it is constantly changing. And even if you feel stuck now, there are pathways you might not have thought of or books you might not have read that can help you. You don't have to suffer alone. Never forget that you are worthy of love just as you are. You belong just because you exist. And your worst moments are just that. They're moments. There will be more moments that will help you to remember that the world is a beautiful place and all the more beautiful for having you in it.